afternoon, all. I'm grateful once again to be with you. I was just saying to my sweet colleague that I am so glad that at SUNY we continue to shine the light. I'm so grateful because so many other places will just kind of forget about it and throw this piece of important movement into the background. So thank you. Thank you so much for all being here. I want to start an invocation, but before I do that, this Romans passage kept coming up in my spirit, and I believe it's Romans 12, if I'm not mistaken. And it talked about as much as it is possible, live peaceably among all. And I got to tell you a really quick story. We use that a lot in our congregations, and we talk about as much as it's possible, live peaceably. What that meant was put up with it. That's not what Holy and Sacred Scripture says. As much as it is possible, after you have done all that you could do, after you have tried, and if there is no more peace, then it's time to vacate. As much as it is possible, live peaceably with all. So I want us to remember that, those of us who are in pulpits and in congregations, that we have to be quite mindful of how it is we're interpreting scriptures, how it is we're using them to pigeonhole and imprison those that we love. Let's be really mindful and careful of how it is that we hand down dogmas, because I've been told that you stay for the sake of the children. Grin and bear it. Things will change. No such thing. As much as it is possible, live peaceably. If not, the alternative is to care for yourself. So let's tell our brothers and sisters, let's tell our children that it is an upward movement. It is not to stay and be abused. Shall we stand for the invocation? Magnificent benefactor, weaver of our lives, the one we call many names. It is your presence that we invite here to be with us today. It is bitter in that we are standing here and there are so many more victims. There's so many more people who have gone to their graves. Oh God, we stand here and it's bitter. But the sweetness comes in the fact that we are standing here, refusing to let the light go out. So we thank you for that. We ask now that your Spirit would be with us in all that is about to happen, all that we're going to hear, oh God, all that we're feeling, all that we have experienced. We ask, oh God, that you would perch with us and remind us that you never stand outside of pain, that you're always with us and you're ever present. But also today, by your Spirit, we need you to charge us. We need you to reignite us. We need you to remind us that we still have a mighty work to do. That domestic violence is still real. Domestic abuse is still real. Family violence is still real. Intimate partner violence is still real. Remind us. Show us what to do. Whatever the forms are, whatever the contributing factors are, whatever the social influences, the effects, oh God, show us. And then give us the tools for prevention. Whether it's physical or verbal, oh God, or economic or religious, reproductive, oh God, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it is between married folk, oh God, whether it's rape or beatings or choking or genital mutilation, give us the tools so that we can set at liberty those who are captive. Come now, Holy Spirit, speak to us, speak through all of us, and more than anything else, ignite us to do our part. And when it's all said and done, you'll get the glory. And others will get the victory and no longer be victims. It's in your precious and matchless name I pray this prayer. Amen. You may be seated.
You are all colorblind. This is a red tie. It is a red tie. I'm sorry. I had already crossed the, I live in Jersey City, and I had already come through the tunnel, and I was like, oh, yeah. Photoshop is going to be our friend. So Marco said he's going to take care of me. I apologize. I just could not turn around. I couldn't do it. No, but thank you all for coming out. I thank Dr. Alianson for inviting me out to, just to be with you guys on this very special occasion. This is always very, very important, something that we do at Downstate. We've done it since I've been here for the last 6 years. And this is, I look forward to it with a purple tie. I really do look forward to it, and I'm so glad that, I see all of this sea of folk who have purple on, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a recognition of those who are in the struggle. I call it a struggle because that's what it is. I really hate the other thing is that I have to get up here behind the good Reverend Walker, who gives messages that only she can give, and then I have to follow that. But she is absolutely correct. There are folks struggling that we don't know are struggling. They are here every day. They are here every day and they are struggling. And it's a great thing that we do. We have programs like this that recognize their struggle, and helping them to get help, even if we don't know they're getting it. We have people like Nicole who've told her story. So it's a beautiful thing, and we are so glad that this program exists, and I'm here. I'm glad to be here with my purple tie on. So, again, I can't stress that part enough either. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you for all that you do on behalf of President Riley and myself and all of us at this institution. It is great that we continue to do this, and we will continue to do this for as long as I'm here, for as long as Dr. Riley is here, for as long as we are all here, because this, again, is ultra important. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gwynn. And you did a good job because now I'm actually seeing purple on him. Nothing. So our next speaker, I'd like to introduce the Senior Associate Vice President of Human Resources, Jamie Greco.
Thank you and welcome. We really appreciate this turnout. It's nice to see. It's hard to follow Reverend, and then it's hard to follow Gwynn, so I don't have a tie story. So I'm just going to jump in. Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used to control an individual, and the abuser uses power and control over their intimate partner. Here are some statistics. In the United States, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. And in 2020, NYPD responded to over 200,000 cases, incidents of domestic violence just in New York. It's pretty sobering when you hear things like that. And 1 in 4 people, if you look around, that's a lot of us in this room. But really, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who is truly a pillar of strength in this area. She's a survivor, an advocate, an author, I'm in awe of her strength, I have to say. Please give a warm welcome to Nicole Sharp for me.
Thank you, Mr. Greco, very much for that. At first, I was like, who's he talking about? But thank you. It is a pleasure to be here again. I don't know how many years it's been, but I know we started doing the campaign for domestic violence awareness here in 2008. And first we started off with Poetry in Purple, the show that we had here. I don't know, was anyone here? Does anyone remember it? Yes. And then we also had it in 2009. 2008 was when I wrote my book, The End of November, Growing Up with Domestic Violence. And that just touched off the whole campaign here. And I was just really overwhelmed in a great way how the Downstate community, and I want to say Downstate family, just came on board and still on board after all these years. Even during COVID, where, we all know what COVID was like. We're all separated, but we still continue to raise awareness no matter what. And just to note, during COVID, domestic violence incidences actually increased exponentially, not just in New York, but all over the world, because now victims were imprisoned in homes with their abusers. They had no outlets to get away like they normally would. So we have to continue raising awareness no matter what until it comes to an end. And I do have that hope to eradicate domestic violence. So if anyone who doesn't know me, I am the ADA ethics analyst in the Department of Human Resources. Human Resources. And besides that, I was appointed by the former Governor Cuomo to the New York State Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence about 5 years ago. And then they appointed me to their Fatality Review Board, where we basically go into different counties all over the state and review domestic violence murders to assess all the steps that led up to the murder, with first responders, what happened, and see how we can be able to change things and use that data to then create legislation to see how we can curtail the incidences of domestic violence and murders. So my mother was killed as a result of domestic violence in 1991. I was 15 years at the time, now you know how old I am. And my whole life was changed. Myself and my siblings, we were orphaned as a result. And life was never the same again. We were not treated very well by the family that we were taken in to live with, which was our own blood. But it's okay, because we grew up with the grace of God. We were able to still stand and then now use our lives to raise awareness against this ugly social disease. So I'm just very happy that I just get so much support, not only here at Downstate, but outside of Downstate. Internationally, I actually have a foundation based in New York called the Heather Hurley Foundation for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. I'm named after my mother, whose name is Heather Hurley. And what we do is we try to help ladies here in New York. We're trying to, ladies who are survivors of domestic violence. We're trying to set up a shelter system for them here, and also in Uganda, ended up in Uganda, that had to be God, where we're helping right now 15 women and their 55 children who were displaced because of domestic violence, and we placed them in more peaceful environments. And here in New York, we're actually working with someone I'm going to introduce you to in a minute, to bring a teen prevention program into high schools so that we can cause an intervention in the lives of children who may become abusers or victims themselves. Because we know that abusers and victims come from the same household, unfortunately. Most of the time it's young people who have grown up seeing domestic violence. And I always call children the most silent of these victims. You think that they're not affected, but they very much are, and they're being built, they're being structured mentally and emotionally by the violence that they see. And unfortunately, they either become a victim or an abuser, but we want to stop that. And so we're working with Monique Chandler-Waterman, the Honorable Assemblywoman, who I'm about to introduce to you right now. Monique Chandler-Waterman was born and raised in East Flatbush section of Brooklyn. She's a mother, wife, educator, healthcare worker, chaplain, community advocate. She attended PS 135 and Meyer 11 like I did. Monique began her career in community service in 2005. There's a lot to say about her. I don't want to go too much into it because she's about to speak and introduce herself. But Monique has always been a champion for raising awareness. She has her team driving a big orange and blue van that says enough on it, enough of the violence in our community. And she's such an advocate against violence, and I just had to invite her here. So we invite you up now, Ms. Monique Chandler-Waterman. She is the Assemblywoman of the District 58. Welcome.
I am honored to be here before you today. I want to thank Nicole Sharp, one of my good friends, and Dion Davis, where is she? And I just have to shout out to Purple Power. That was inspired by Nicole Sharp. She has these lovely masks, and it's basically taking back your power. So today, this is my power suit I'm wearing. I also want to thank Jamie Greco. I just had a nice conversation on how we could reduce gun violence by job procurement for our community members. So I want to thank Dr. Wynn. I want to thank, of course, the president. I saw the coordinator with a nice purple sweater on Wagner, right? So I'm just trying to, you don't want to ever leave anybody out when you're thanking people. I want to thank all of you for being here. We hear a lot of things that just sound similar sometimes, and people say, here we go with a domestic violence conversation again. I think when I first told my story was inspired by Nicole Sharp, and we did like I believe we was doing it for anti-violence theme. We did soca fitness, we did different things, and we did therapeutic services, and I started telling my story, and she was looking at me like, this is weird. Normally you hear about a woman being abused, but we don't hear how it starts, the inception. So I'm going to talk about my story. And it's a generational, sometimes curse for families. So I was raised by strong black women. My mother worked 3 and 4 jobs, and my grandmother, my grandparents raised me. And part of my teaching growing up was if you're in a relationship from a young age and the man even look at you a certain way, you be prepared. Pot, frying pan, hot water, grits, whatever it is. That's before Tyler Perry started talking about it. So that is how I was raised. Then I realized growing up that my grandmother was raised me through her trauma because she was abused. And the abusers have people that love them too. I love my grandfather. You can't tell me nothing about him. I didn't grow up seeing him abuse my grandmother, but obviously there was a past. And on my mother's side and my father's side, that's what my mother and father grew up seeing. So my father wasn't around, but my mother never told us any stories that was negative about my father. I overhear stuff on the phone, but one time as I was running, I was going to senior centers, I was going different places doing my advocacy work, and a lady saw me in the crowd and say, "Hey, is your mother so-and-so?" I was like, "Yes." She said, "I used to babysit you." And the woman kept on watching me. Next time I saw her, she said, "I want to tell you something. When I used to babysit you and your mother was trying to escape your dad, she used to bring clothes to my house every day, little by little bit, and I helped your mother escape." Now imagine, I'm over 30 years old, this woman's in the crowd, and it is the village. That's the reason why I ran, because this village helped raise me, and here's this woman telling me about the story. So my mother finally told me the story that my father hit her, and I nearly fell. And then that's when she had the courage to leave. So my brother, I remember going back. I'm going to jump around a little bit to connect the dots for you. And I remember my brother and I said, we would never do that. We'll never be in a relationship like that. My brother vowed he would never do that. And well, we did have a vow, but he didn't know it, and I didn't know at the time that if the other one do show signs of it, we're going to hold them accountable. So as my brother, he was very angry about not having his father there. And when I met my father, my brother first said, because I had 30 years old now, look for my father. He found him, went to the house, and my brother could remember so much things about that house. And they said to him, "How can you remember? You wasn't even 1. You were a baby." He could remember the drapes. That meant my brother saw all of the violence as a baby. So even though we didn't live seeing it, he seen it. So when he got into his relationships and not able to express himself, the behavior started looking like my father, grandfathers, and I had to be the one to say enough is enough. I made sure he was held accountable. My family didn't like the way I did it because there was police involved. But I am someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone loves me, someone loves you. And we are enablers sometimes of abusers when we're growing up. I remember my brother having outbursts, and probably we didn't have resources. We didn't know how to deal with it. So it's like, don't say this to him. What did you do? Why are you talking to him that way? So I was groomed to be a victim as well, right? And he was coddled in certain things and never got the support he needed. So when you understand how the trauma, adverse, I would say trauma that happens when you're growing up, not that you need to look in the mind of an abuser, but there's ways that we need to figure out how do we not enable behavior within our households when they're younger. One is, yes, let's get out the situation as soon as possible. But another thing is, don't have shame. Let me tell you some things our family members would say. Don't let the neighbors hear, right? They would say, what happens in the house stays in the house. Mind your business. Don't tell anybody. So I used to rebut that with, but the neighbors got stuff going on too. I saw cops over there. Nobody's perfect. We are not perfect. And when you remove the shame of getting help or getting support and say, I'm not perfect, I go through things, then I think it's easier to get help. I think the shame sometimes and the dependency or people saying, why are you still with him? There's a lot of stuff that we do and there's no explanation. But like I said, people love the abusers, right? because they come from a family and there's that first time, that first love or whatever it is that keep you there, but you need help to get out the situation. So one of the things I think is destigmatizing, getting help for men and women, because sometimes we think this is just a woman thing. No, it's an everybody thing, man and woman. And that's what we have to recognize. So when you see a woman who's engaged in a man in a certain way, we need to tell that woman too and speak to them. Because we expect a woman to hit, but the woman don't always expect to get hit back. So we need to make sure that we are putting those things out there to say when it's not right, holding our family members accountable. And I think family members have more influence than anything else. My brother will call me, we'll talk through conflict, we'll work through it as a way to get to the point where he can resolve the issue with words. And if that's what's needed, then that's what I'm gonna do. So I come up here to tell my story because people hear one lens, but if you hear about how it starts and we could do our little part to hold people accountable, and holding them accountable don't look pretty. My family didn't speak to me for years, but in my heart, I was good. I was okay with that. Because I went through years of trauma. Fighting and siblings shouldn't include throwing each other like wrestling matches across the room, and that's not okay. And okay is not saying, what did you say, why did you make him mad? That's not okay. We need to make sure that we understand the resources out there too. And my family didn't have the resources, but we have them now, or we know them now. So some of the resources that I've learned, even on Sunday, was, did you know that if someone is in distress and they don't want to use the phone, they could text 911? I didn't know that. It was out for 5 years, so those are some of the things we could share. Did you know that? He's like, no. And also, did you know there's a number 988? If someone needs support or in a mental health crisis, they can call 988 to get support, because 911 is overly used, but they are not equipped to handle someone in a mental health crisis. So as we talk about trauma and all the things we talk about, those are some of the helps and tips that I could give today. And of course, I'm always going off script. So let me tell you a couple of things as well. We talked about 2021 and the COVID-19 numbers. And people were saying, and I think, Nicole, you and I talked about this, oh, there's more domestic violence. Where does this all come from? All of a sudden, these numbers are exploding. No, when you're out all day long and you're not with your partner, it reduces the incidence. It was always there, but we got so skilled at navigating home, and so now we were there all the time. And unfortunately, during that time, a lot of services was removed. So that explains a lot of the numbers. So then we need to look into that and how we can find support. So we'll continue working on that, and I will say as a teenager, getting into the schools like we discussed. We need programs like that, because unfortunately, as a high school teacher, I've seen where my students wasn't allowed to go to after-school programs because their high school partner said they couldn't. So having education programs like that also would help reduce those things as well. So I don't want to keep you long, but I think as much as I can read statistics and I can read numbers, one is too much. But I think if we have an understanding beyond the numbers and beyond the research that we have in front of us to know things, I think sometimes things go over people's heads, but when we make it relatable to you as an individual and understanding, I think that come across better. So we need to not judge, we need to be open-minded, and we need to be supportive, and we need to hold our loved ones accountable no matter which side of the fence that they are on. So I just want to thank y'all all for having this very important event and raising awareness. And yes, every year, every day, it needs to be talked about, because oftentimes we don't know what people are going through. I make it my business to say something nice, especially when women and women, sometimes we don't do that enough. There's always something on someone, their spirit, their energy, their shoes, something I could say. And sometimes that person's going through something that day, and you saying something nice help them. So as I stand here before you as one of the first Black women, Caribbean women, to represent District 58, which I'm very proud of. And I learned from my mentor, Nick Perry, who's now the U.S. Ambassador to Jamaica, it's the most important thing to learn about in this role is that we serve people. And we need to show love and unity. And that go across any topic you talk about. You have to find love and you have to give people grace. We are not all built the same way. We are all different for many reasons. This world would be very boring if we were all the same. But when you give people love, empathy, respect, and you realize we are all in this together, I just think that that will produce a better community. So I promise to people that I am never going to be perfect. I promise not to be perfect, but I promise to do the best I can. But it starts with all of us and edifying each other and making sure that you hold your elected officials accountable. When you want programs, you want certain things, Nicole was like, whether Monique is going to do it or not, I'm going to say it enough times that she's going to make sure that that funding gets to that school. So we need to make sure our elected officials are working for us. And I promise to do the best I can. And just remember that we take our voice, we take our power, and we take that to the poll sites on November 8th because there's an election coming up. And a lot of the things that we have going on in our community can be solved with politics, but it's solved within us too because we have the power. The power is in the people, all right? So purple power to you all. Love you and thank you.
And thank you for being so transparent. We really appreciate you opening us up to your story, which is so very powerful. And I just want to thank everyone who took part today. Thank you all. I want you all to give yourselves a hand clap. You are raising awareness just being here, wearing purple. Thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. Gwynn for his support, and also the whole human resources team, headed by Jamie Greco, audiovisual team, classroom services, the library, Department of Communications, IT, all the staff who helped to set up, Ernie for catering today's event, and our whole Domestic Violence Awareness Committee, Dr. Magda Alianson, who is our past chair, who had the vision of taking us down memory lane, as you can see, Adriana Conde, Dawn Skeet Walker, Arlene C. Saw, I'm so sorry, Arlene Saw, and Alicia Goodridge. You don't know it, but you're on the committee. Thank you so much for all your support. She supports so much, you might as well be on the committee. Thank you. And I just want to just introduce again Dr. Reverend Cardinal Walker, who is going to close us out.
Let us all stand again. This time I'm asking for us to engage in an honoring silence just for a moment of silence, remembering those who have passed on, those who have had the courage to leave, and those who are still trying to. And now, with the loudest voice that you have, enough is enough. On a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Enough, enough. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Walker. And everyone, thank you for coming today. I really do appreciate this. And now we can eat.